What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Whoop podcast. I'm your host, Will Ahmed, founder and CEO of Whoop, and we're on a mission to unlock human performance. If you're thinking about joining Whoop, you can visit our website, whoop.com, sign up for a free 30-day trial, and decide whether you want to become a Whoop member. That's a pretty good deal. Okay, on this week's episode, Whoop Global Head of Human Performance, Principal Scientist, the fearless Kristen Holmes is joined by tennis star Bethanie Mattek-Sands. The 9-time Grand Slam champion is here today to talk about her commitment to health and wellness and recovery, and how that gave her a resurgence late in her career. She's commonly known as America's rock star of tennis, and she has brought a charismatic and eccentric energy to the court, which has propelled her to 31 titles throughout her career. Kristen and Bethanie discuss starting tennis at a young age. She was really thrust into adulthood, turning pro at just 14 years old, leaning into her charismatic personality, how Bethanie monitors her health and favorite recovery modalities. She's used Whoop to test what works best for her. Her love for the infrared sauna, resetting and taking time away from tennis, her passion for data and how it has prolonged her career, and her view on the growing state of women's sports. If you have a question to see answered on the podcast, email us podcast@whoop.com, call us 508-443-4952. Without further ado, here is Kristen Holmes and Bethanie Mattek-Sands.
Bethanie, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Nice to see you too. We're rocking our glasses here. I feel like this fits the mood right now. It's 9 p.m. in Rome right now, so this is like my wind down with you. But I'm excited to dive in some details.
I know. We'll get your mind right before you go to bed. We'll do a little breath work at the end to
There we go.
wind down from the
Love it.
conversation. Bethanie, it's been so fun learning about you. You know, I think the least interesting thing about you actually is your tennis. You have just this incredibly vibrant, amazing personality, and you're just impacting the world in so many ways. But let's start. I mean, your tennis career has been legendary in doubles and mixed doubles. You have just won, titles and Olympic gold medals, and most recently 2 titles, even this year, Miami and Abu Dhabi. And so you're off to a banger start in 2024. Maybe let's talk about young Bethanie and how has she evolved?
Wow, that's actually a great question because, I was kind of reminiscing how long I've been pro. This is going to be my 25th year playing tennis as a professional. I turned pro when I was 14, but I started playing tennis when I was 5. My dad got me interested in tennis, and I will say I played a lot of different sports when I was young, and I feel like that's maybe one of the reasons that I'm still around right now. I felt like I was well-rounded as an athlete. I didn't get that singular focus too early. I've seen a lot of players come and go. And if we're talking about young Bethanie and looking at all the juniors that I played with, you just start to see how small of a percentage it is that makes it to that elite status in athletics. And it's nothing to say that, pump myself up or anything. I think a lot of parents and kids go into sports with the idea that they're going to play professional. And it's a great goal, but I think there's so many other things that you can get out of sports and continuing to play sports, even if you don't go pro. I think that's my main message. And one of the things that's inspired me to sort of talk about it that in that way is 70% of girls give up sports by the age of 14. And if I'm thinking at 14 is when I'm turning pro, and that's when so many women, girls are giving up on sports. And, I think about everything that I've learned and sort of the woman I've become. I grew up in and around the sport of tennis. I mean, when I turned pro at 14, I was sort of thrust into this adult world, and it was uncomfortable. I, was already different in the way I grew up. I missed some of my schooling because I went to an academy and I played tournaments and I traveled. I was homeschooled for a little bit. And so, already that, my social life was very different from your average teenager. And then turning pro that young, you're sort of thrust in this adult world. And I was, unsure of myself a little bit. And I feel like the colorful, sort of outgoing person you see now, it was very different when I was younger. It took me a while to come out of my shell and to sort of, gain this confidence within myself. And that took years, I would say. The biggest shift sort of going from 14-year-old Bethany till now is really releasing my identity with my wins and losses. I would think so highly of myself when I won. I'd be rewarded, I'd be praised, everyone would love me, I'd want to hang out with people, and then I would lose and I would isolate and I would, think be pretty negative towards myself. And I think that was one of my biggest sort of growing pains that I went through from the very beginning to who I am now.
It's so hard for your identity and your self-worth not to be attached to your wins and losses. And I think that's just like one of the I think hardest things for athletes to learn is that they're just totally separate. They're not related. In some ways, I wish there was a bit more education, to kind of help young athletes really unpack that, in language that they can understand. And because you can really spiral, in those moments
Yep.
where you just feel like you could have done better, should have done better, and to actually view yourself as less than because of that, is obviously pretty unproductive.
It takes a while to learn that. I mean, really,
It does,
because
yeah.
ultimately you think in a warped way, you think you're helping push yourself to improve by thinking those things of yourself, right? There's like this
Yeah.
odd dichotomy that that's what it takes to be successful, or that's what it takes to get to the next level, or to beat your opponents. And I feel like that's maybe part of my message as a 39-year-old athlete, is that I've gotten to kind of go through the whole cycle and still have this awesome opportunity to play professional tennis now with a pretty different mindset. And that's, for me, it's something that, you had to walk through the fire to figure that out. And you had to sort of crash and burn a little bit and, feel the highs of those wins and how great that felt with everyone around you, and feel the lows when you were out and you're injured or you're losing, and to feel that difference and to really start separating how you feel as a person. So it's really, I mean, you're spot on with what you're saying.
You mentioned confidence. You seem, again, this is me just observing, but this extraordinarily confident individual, optimistic, charismatic. You said that you didn't necessarily have that as a younger athlete, and do you remember kind of this inflection point where you were like, you know what, I'm going to lean into who I am. I'm going to lean into, this personality that is just inside me. Like, what was that moment?
I think I had a couple, but I'll give you one of the stories. I remember one of the years that I was going down to Australia. When I was younger, I had signed a contract with Nike. And then after that, I had been with Adidas. And I had all this new Adidas gear from the off season. I brought it to the trip to Australia, which is January. It's the beginning of our season. And I got an email saying that I had been cut from the team. And in my mind, I was really upset, but I was like, I don't want to wear all this Adidas stuff because I just got cut from the team. And so that's kind of a little bit of the beginning when you started seeing some of my funky fashion come out, because I went shopping. And at the time, I mean, this was years ago, there wasn't like the cool athleisure Lulus and Athleta's and all these things, Lorna Jane's and all these, cool brands that you could get cool. So I was shopping at normal stores, seeing if I could play in some of these like tank tops and skirts and shirt options, and sort of put together some cool outfits and colorful outfits. And for me, sort of showing that fashion side and being unique in that way was kind of a catalyst for me coming out of my shell. It was a talking point. It was something I was interested off the court anyways. But it was also a conversation starter. Generally, when I wore something sort of funky or noteworthy, someone would ask me about it. And it sort of helped me sort of start conversations and talk about it. And I remember that sort of being a little bit of a catalyst to the more colorful tattoo person you see now. But it really happened over years. I mean, I met my husband in my early 20s. I didn't have any tattoos before that. So that was like, once I met him, I would say I gained even a little bit more confidence with my womanhood and with that relationship, because before that, it was hard. I was on the road by myself a lot. And, you can talk to a lot of athletes, but when you're sort of in that mode, you don't have a lot of time to go on dates, and you're not home for a lot of weeks. So it's like, hey, I got a couple weeks in November if you want to hook up. And it gets challenging. So I
Yeah.
feel like, over the years, it's definitely come out. And, I'm really grateful for, the people that I've had around me that have encouraged that. Like, they've really encouraged me to sort of lean into my personality quirks and sort of my creativity. And because if you watch me play on the court, that's how I play. I'm not a really cookie cutter tennis player. And I remember I went to Chris Everett's tennis academy when I was young, and I remember her, even to this day, she was like, why didn't you just want to go cross court? And I was like, that was boring for me. That's not how I wanted to play tennis. I wanted to drop shot. I wanted to go down the line. I wanted to, be flashy and athletic. And so it just, I feel like staying true to all of that, when I really could stay true to that within myself, that's when I really started coming into my game, coming into myself as a tennis player, coming into myself as a woman. And that was years. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm speaking as a veteran right now at 39, and it really took some time.
I think that's like a great lesson for coaches listening, that I think we try to fit athletes, or maybe this is a message for athletes, to find coaches that like work with your quirks, right? And work with, I think about, like, if you're playing chess, for example, like, there's chess players who really like to be aggressive. There's other chess players who like to be more conservative and slower paced. And, there's a personality, I think, attached to how you play the game, and I think that enabling and allowing for and building an infrastructure that allows that individuality is so important. You'll get so much more from an athlete if they're allowed to express themselves, and
100%.
and
100%.
I love that you found that.
And speaking of chess, actually, you just kind of brought up something. Have you read the book The Art of Learning by Josh
Oh,
Waitzkin?
as you were talking, that is exactly what I was thinking in my brain. I was just like, gosh, this sounds exactly like how kind of Josh unpacked his whole kind of learning journey and his development
Yep.
as a chess player. And yeah, this is
Yeah,
a beautiful book.
honestly, years ago, that I picked up that book, and that was probably one of my most reread,
Mm.
sort of highlighted books that I had, and that was probably a good, like, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. And I actually reached out to Josh too. I had a couple back and forth emails because I had a few other personal questions. But I think, really, to throw out a book at the beginning of our podcast here,
Yeah.
that's actually one of my favorites still to this day. So that's really funny.
I would put that in my top 10 as well. I remember reading that when it first came out, and I think he was on the Tim Ferriss podcast maybe, so I really got into this Josh Waitzkin kind of like rabbit hole for a good
Yeah.
a good period of time. He's really
Yep.
fascinating, and I think his journey is so interesting, and there's a lot to learn from it. I'm excited to talk about recovery. Obviously, it's one of the reasons why we gravitated to you is just, how vigilant you are about and how you prepare and how you think about your body and your mind in this really holistic manner. And it's just so inspiring. How did you gain this perspective around recovery? Like, did it come from injury? Did it come from, what was that kind of catalyst that being like, all right, this is actually the thing?
I've done a lot of deep thinking about that, and I'll tell you this: it's been sort of in my part of my recent emotional journey is really going back to how my parents raised me. And I'm saying this with a grain of salt because I went through a phase where I didn't really get along with my dad. My dad was my coach when I was younger, and we really butted heads. And I went through a whole cycle of, not even talking to him for a long time,
Mm.
and trying to find my own way and be rebellious and independent, and, proving to him, proving to myself, proving to coaches. But if I'm honest, my dad really instilled a lot of the habits that I've sort of have propelled even further. I remember as a kid, my dad was opting to send me to a naturopathic doctor. He was opting to send me, I was getting muscle tested. I was
Wow.
getting massages. I was doing acupuncture. And this is as like a 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. And I remember even before that, as a kid, I would have my exercise routines, and we would have push-ups, sit-ups, bicep curls, and we'd have our weekly list, and we'd put stars. And at the end of the week, if we did all of our exercises, we would go to Toys R Us and pick something out. And so I really have to give my dad and mom like a lot of credit for sort of instilling some of those habits that I feel like I've definitely expanded on,
Mm,
from that point. But I think beyond that, injuries definitely humble you and make you
mm,
rethink things. I had a really big injury. The knee injury is sort of what most people, if you YouTube, that will
mhm,
come up. And that was something that you're going from the top of the world to not being able to get out of bed. And it forces you to change your thought process. You go from being this athlete thinking that a certain amount of things worked, this certain routine worked, to having to learn how to walk again, you have to create a new normal. My knee, if I'm honest, has never felt the same. It's never felt the same as it did pre-injury. But does it feel really strong right now? It does. But I had to emotionally reprogram. I had to mentally reprogram. Actually, physically, that was probably the easiest process to go from injured to back up and running on the court. It's more of that trust in the body. And
mm,
so what I've sort of challenged myself to do is to really always question if what I'm doing right now is what's going to be the best option going forward. That's what I see a lot of athletes that get stuck or aren't coming back from injury is they're kind of hanging on to what worked in the past. And you really have to be willing to sort of explore and get to know yourself. Like it's one thing also to have a coach or a doctor say, this is the best thing for you. This is how you got to do it. But I've really taken it upon myself to learn how I feel, to listen how I feel, and to explore a lot of different things. Has everything worked? No, I've tried some things for a month, put it
mhm,
out to the side, say, hey, I didn't get the benefits that I wanted,
mhm,
but some other things have surprised me, and I've held on to them for years. So, I think going into this with this mentality of adaptability and curiosity is
mm,
sort of what has led me to all the recovery modalities that I'm using now. And we could talk in 5 years, and I'm sure it will change. We're going to have new
mhm,
insights, we're going to have new data, we're going to have new studies coming out. And for me, that's really exciting, right? Like
mhm,
that's one of the reasons why I'm still playing professional tennis too, is I feel like I can still get better. I still feel like there's percentage gaps that I
mm,
can improve, and that's what makes it exciting. There's never, in the beginning, you always think like maybe there's this pie in the sky, and once I get there, I'm going to be done. And,
mm,
the further I've gotten in my career, the more I've opened my training and performance and recovery, not just to my tennis, but to lifestyle, to health. I want to be in my 70s and 80s and active. And once I sort of made that transformation mentally and emotionally, of course I'm still getting performance benefits on the court, but it's really opened my eyes to a lot of different options out there. And again, it's really something I like to share what I do, but I'm not here to say you need to follow this protocol exactly and
mm,
these are the results you're going to get. I want people to play around with it and to get to know themselves. I mean, that's what, and again, it's on a holistic level. It's mentally,
mm.
emotionally, and physically. They're all tied together. It even on my Whoop data, I can tell you when I'm having emotionally tough days,
Yeah.
I'm getting stress censored, right? So I think that's also another thing I've learned going this far into my career is I was so focused on what physically I could do to either recover, get stronger, get faster, win. And now I'm really seeing the emotional and the
Mm.
mental side of things and how that affects my performance and how it actually affects your data.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a psychophysiologist, right? So that's what I do is but the reason why I became a psychophysiologist, I first started studying psychology and then I was like, wow, you can only talk yourself into a better future before your biology and your physiology take over. So there's got to be this crosstalk, right? And if we're only thinking about one or the other as an athlete, we're obviously missing the other half.
Yep.
And so I appreciate, the fact that you're kind of coming at this from like this, lens of curiosity and self-experimentation. And I could not agree more that that I think really is the path. People were, and I think what Whoop has really elevated in terms of conversation is that what is happening within is not necessarily what's happening between, right? Like, the effects that are happening inside me are not going to be replicated to the person to my left or right. We have unique physiology, unique ways, patterns of thinking, unique demands on our time. All of that is so individual, and I think Whoop gives us this opportunity to really understand how we are responding and adapting to all of life's loads, right?
Yep.
So, saying that, so curious, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you can't live without day to day? Like, this is like, hey, I know that this directly impacts my ability to show up as the best version of myself.
All right. So I'm going to give some truth bombs here, I guess, for myself. So number one, alcohol. Alcohol, and I've tested it where it's, we talk about, tequila, red wine in the day. And like I can
2
kind
ounces
of,
versus 4 ounces,
yeah.
6 p.m. versus 4
If I
p.m.
have one sip in the afternoon with protein, like trust me, I've gone every which way. And
24 ounces of water for every 4 ounces of
and it's one of those stats that will always bump me down, like at the end of the day. So if it's going to be an evening where I want to enjoy some wine, I want to enjoy a margarita, I make sure it's always ahead of days off. Like I just know what I'm going to get the next day. I know it's going to take me 2 to 3 days recovery. And I think that's sometimes what people don't realize too, is it's not just the next day. Like it sometimes will take me a couple days to get back into the green. And at some point, are we emotionally going to be like, what, I just want to have a good time and do it? Yes, 100%. I'm here for the balance. And that's why I'll time up when I have those nights out with friends and everything. But for me, alcohol and getting to bed late. So I aim to be in bed before 10, which is why this podcast, we're like right on the edge. No,
I know, so on the edge.
No, I'll be good. I'll be good. I can sleep in. I'm not playing tomorrow, so I can sleep in a little bit. But what I found is, yeah, even if I think I'm getting my 8 hours from 10 to 6, 7 versus 12 to 8, I'll always get better recovery the earlier I get to bed and the earlier I wake up. So even when I'm traveling, if I get to bed too late, I'll wake up early so that I'm tired that next day or the next evening, so I go to bed earlier rather than sleeping in.
The data supports that at population levels. It's absolutely,
yeah. So, and
so good.
It's for me, I played around with intermittent fasting. This is another big factor for me that will get me into, I'll tell you, my highest HRVs have been when I've done long fasts from 24 hours to 36. I've even done a couple 72-hour fasts. And that's when I get into the 136, 150 HRV. And it's not just about that number either. Like it's great to get a high number like that and you're just showing it off. But I notice my systemic inflammation goes down. I can feel the difference. And for me, if I'm thinking of one common denominator that I want to address throughout my career, it's been inflammation, whether it's been with my injuries, whether it's just been not being able to move the next day, whether it's I feel my joints. If I can manage that, I feel pretty athletic and I can do a lot. So that's why the recovery is so important. And for me, food and nutrition is a big one there. So eating late in the evening for me, I don't like today. I had my last meal at 3 p.m. That's when I'm going to feel my best, 100%. I've tested it out. Even if I had 200 calories, almonds, protein, carbs, it's when I eat too close to bedtime, I don't drop into my REM sleep. I don't get enough deep sleep. Generally, my skin temperature will go up because I'm still digesting through that early part of the night. So if I can go to bed on as empty as a stomach as I can, I will sleep my best.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Okay. So your feeding window is about 6 hours. Your eating window, sorry, is about 7 hours.
So I'll go anywhere from probably 6 to 8, because I'll wake up early. So my big
Yeah.
thing, what I've been doing now is I eat pretty much when I wake up, like within 30 minutes of waking up. Like this morning, I had veal and eggs for my breakfast. And
Hmm.
I started out with some protein, some fats, and that's helped me because I know a lot of people intermittent fast with the later part of the day.
Hmm.
And I was doing that for a little bit, and I'm not shooting it down. I just know that for me personally, I felt better when I've shifted my bigger meals earlier in the day.
You're more insulin sensitive earlier in the day. You become more insulin resistant as the day goes on. We are
Mm,
not meant to digest food after the sun goes down. That's just the reality of the situation. So the fact that when I hear the internet talking about fasting, I get a little annoyed because I think we just put a one size fits all on this notion of fasting. You're not restricting calories. You are
mm-mm.
just shifting your feeding window to earlier in the day when frankly, that is when we're most active and when we need the energy. So, like, I think that women, we over index. We hear, a scientist or influencer, talk about intermittent fasting for women is bad. No, restricting your feeding window is actually the path for humans, right? Because we're not meant to be eating for 16 hours a day. Like, that is
Yep.
so metabolically, like, costly to our
Yeah.
system and leads to things like inflammation and we, again, like, we're, all sorts of downstream effects, it impacts sleep. But I think to your point, like, it's gonna be individual, right? So not everyone is gonna respond the same, and this is what works for you, and you've experimented. This is what works for you, and I think that's kind of the opportunity with a lot of these data is that you've been able to very much from a data-driven lens and how you feel and how you perform, you've been able to kind of see these results.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
actually going along with the insulin resistance. So I was wearing a
a glucose
CGM for a
monitor,
little
yeah.
a glucose monitor, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I found really interesting about
Mm,
that, but in line with what you're saying was I could eat the same exact food in the morning, and I would have a different response when I ate the same exact thing in the afternoon. I would have a higher spike. Same calories, same amount, same
yep.
food. So it for me again, that's another one of my tinkering. I wanted to really dive into my nutrition and sort of compare what even what also I noticed was interesting to bring the Whoop data into this is I noticed when I was spiking on my insulin, my stress level on my Whoop was spiking as well, and I'd be in that high stress zone. And so I
Yep.
started putting two and two together where some of those higher spikes that I was having with some of the foods that I was eating was also contributing to me being in that high stress zone, even when I'm thinking, I'm not even stressed right now. Like I feel pretty good. I'm kind of chilling. I'm
You're
relaxed.
like,
And it
"Oh, I
was,
ate."
yeah, I ate
Yeah.
something that spiked my blood sugar and kept it up there for a little too long. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So, all right, so you restrict your feeding window. That's a pretty aggressive feeding window, but it gives you this really nice long break where your body can absolutely focus on recovery,
mhm.
which is I think the whole to me the whole benefit of this time restricted eating. We actually just did a study. We're writing up these results and we're going to send them in for peer review. So they're preliminary, but it supports what you're saying. We saw basically the folks who engaged in time restricted eating had via sleep consistency. So time restricted eating, viewing morning sunlight led to greater
Yep.
sleep consistency. And then greater sleep consistency led to better cardiovascular function and vagal tone. So it was like a
Yeah.
really cool, yeah, it's cool to
That's
see all that.
awesome. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome because that morning that's why I like to get up early. Like I have a balcony even here that I'll spend time drinking my morning tea or coffee, and I spend
Mm,
my time in outside in the sunlight. But I would say along that vein, one of my biggest hacks for traveling and getting used to time zone
mm,
is long fasting. That's like bar none. And I've traveled with compression. I've traveled with
mhm.
my own snacks. I've traveled like I have like all my neuro sort of brainwave therapy. Like I travel with it all. Like I've done it all. But one of the biggest, I would say, pro positive, I'm getting used to a new time zone is fasting until I get to a breakfast time zone where I'm going. So even if I get somewhere in the evening, I'll wait out another 12 hours and make sure that my first meal in a new city is my breakfast meal, and it will be a big meal. And I'm telling you what, like traveling you're relaxing anyway. So it's not, I don't really feel calorie deficient sort of like I'm sitting around, I'm laying down, I'm watching movies. Like I don't need that much energy as far as calories go, right? This isn't, but when I get somewhere, I've just felt I've been able to sleep better. It's probably cut my time zone sort of getting
Just
used to the
resetting your
different time zone
circadian rhythms
by at
faster.
least a few days. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. I love that. Someone who studies circadian alignment and circadian misalignment, I'll tell you that like, I think that is the way to go for sure. And I think for folks who, are not accustomed to doing those longer fasts, it might be challenging, but I think you've just trained your system. And I think traveling, going across these time zones, being in, suboptimal sleeping conditions, all of this is super stressful on the body. And
Yep.
eating, frankly, is a little stressful on the body, and so when you remove that and you allow your body just to kind of, run at baseline, you really preserve, I think, a lot of that, energy for reacclimatizing when you get to your new time zone. So I love that. That's how I approach travel as well, based on everything that I know about circadian rhythms. And that is such great advice, I think, for folks. Do you use like a electrolyte, to kind of
I
buffer?
was just gonna,
Okay,
I was just
because
gonna
that's
add
the
that.
key to making it. I think is you just got to
It
have the
is.
salt. Yeah.
100%. I actually travel with salt. So I'll
Yeah.
put it on my tongue and I'll just suck like on the salt for a little bit if I really need it, but I'll mix it in
Yeah.
my hot water. I'll have the hot water and lemon sometimes, but I'll mix it in my water. I always have electrolytes with me. For me personally, I found that the electrolytes that are a little more magnesium heavy have helped me feel better. But I'll say when I first started fasting, I didn't use the salt and the electrolytes, and it made if you find yourself or anyone finds themselves struggling to sort of stay clear and fight off those hunger pains, it's definitely the electrolytes for sure. That made a massive difference in how long I could fast.
I love that. Yeah, I think for folks who are like intentionally fasting, like the salt obviously isn't going to break the fast, so
Yeah.
they don't trigger a release insulin, and I think that's what like you're trying to minimize during travel is those kind of just trying to keep your insulin levels as stable as possible throughout that travel experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Okay, so anything else that you feel like is really core to kind of your just principles of just optimizing recovery?
Oh, I would say so. When I'm home, one of the best purchases I've made was my infrared sauna. That is something that what I am in every single day, and I have it on all different kinds of settings. But that is something when I'm home, and I can feel the difference. People can see the difference when I've been in my infrared sauna regularly for a week. My husband will even mention something. It's like
I
your
know.
skin is glowing.
I
I was
know.
like, I
It's
know.
like it's so people don't realize it's just like magic. I know. I'm obsessed with mine.
It's probably one of my favorite investments that I've made. But when I'm traveling right now, obviously I don't have access to infrared
Mhm,
saunas, but I
mhm,
carry a red light with me
mm,
that I can put on my knees. It's
mm.
a red light wrap. But I actually travel with a mattress topper. So this was it's 23 pounds and it's an all organic latex foam mattress topper that I'll put on top of every hotel bed that I go to. And it's the same one that I use at home. So a lot of the beds, especially in Europe, are pretty firm. So whenever I put my mattress topper on top of it, I get a great night's sleep as if I'm at home. And I remember there were a couple years we got an Airbnb and my coach was staying with me. I had a hitting partner, another friend, my husband. Everybody woke up; they couldn't even tie their shoes. And I'm waking up. I was like, guys, I feel pretty great. So it's one of the best travel investments I made. I mean, it's a separate bag; it's its own bag, the bed bag we call it. But I have a foam pillow in there, silk pillowcase. I have my mattress topper, and that's something that has gone with me on every single trip for the last, I don't know, it's probably been like 10 years now that I've been traveling with it.
Do you feel like everyone on tour is dialing in on these variables in the way that you are? Because I mean, this is a massive competitive advantage.
I think so. And you know what? I feel like people are sort of turning the corner with this.
Yeah.
I feel like I probably go a little extreme. So I'm usually that outlier that's, I travel with an electric modality called an ARP unit. That's something that I've been traveling with for 14 years. It's something I can do for neurological recovery. It's something I can do if I have an injury that I can hook up. I've slept with it. And I feel like not everyone does all of that. But again, I will be honest, not everyone tells you what they're doing while they're doing it. I feel like you all end up hearing about athletes' secret stories sort of after they're retired. But I kind of share all the gadgets that I'm testing out on the road, just because as much of an advantage as it is, there's still something to be said about the talent and skill and mental fortitude it takes to win tennis matches. Again, these are all great recovery modalities, and they do bump up my fitness levels, my recovery levels, but to win matches, there's still a certain skill set that at the end of the day, it's like either you're going to beat me today or I'm going to beat you. And that's where, I at the beginning of my career, I dove so much into all the physical things that I could do, when really, I could tell you, like, one of my non-negotiables is always doing breath work. For me, that's transformed sort of how I thought about recovery, because that was a game changer for me, just in even in moments where I was injured and I couldn't do a lot of cardio. Doing breath work put me in a place where I didn't feel like I was so far out of shape. And I feel like all athletes should take advantage of that. That's a massive advantage, knowing that you don't have to beat up your body and you can make all these sort of gains with recovery and fitness just doing consistent breath work. So for me, breath work's a non-negotiable.
Yeah. If you look at, I don't know that it's funny. I was talking to Rachel Vickery, who is a kind of a human performance specialist, and she specializes in teaching people how to breathe properly. It is pretty wild when you look at professional athletes, and probably half of them are not breathing properly, right? So they're leaving so much on the table in terms of untapped physiological
I know
potential.
I wasn't breathing properly. Like, once I was doing it, I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
breathing in long enough.
Like
I'm
from the
not fully
diaphragm, like
I'm not fully
yeah.
exhaling. So I'm there.
It's definitely worth, I think, investigating, because I think if you're, if you're not breathing properly, it's going to impact your sleep. It's going to impact just your cognitive bandwidth throughout the day, your ability to focus. It impacts, probably every aspect of your life. So it's definitely worth, I think, checking to see if you're breathing properly and if you're not, training it.
I have one of these with me too. Actually, now they're talking about breathing. It's a little breathwork trainer. So, and I actually love this. Like, it's really helped me sort of build up my breathing. I do a lot of meditation and I enjoy it, right? And I do it before matches. I'll do it to relax in the evening. I'll do it to wake up in the morning. The breath work for me was a game changer.
What's up, folks? If you are enjoying this podcast, or if you care about health, performance, fitness, you may really enjoy getting a Whoop. That's right. You can check out Whoop at whoop.com. It measures everything around sleep, recovery, strain, and you can now sign up for free for 30 days. So you'll literally get the high performance wearable in the mail for free. You get to try it for 30 days, see whether you want to be a member. And that is just at whoop.com. Back to the guests.
I think all these things that you're doing clearly are adding up. When you look at your career, it's like mind blowing, like how consistently you've been able to show up tournament after tournament, and not just, show up, but actually, win medals and titles. And it's phenomenal. So, you're doing all these micro things every day pretty consistently, and I have to believe that they're contributing. And you do all the training. How do you reset? How do you think about your time away from the game, and what does that involve for you?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because I feel like I'm probably one of the players that has put the least amount of hours in on court. And sometimes that's been unintentional because of injuries. I remember there was a phase where I knew my body could only handle an hour and a half of tennis, and I had to forego a warm up. And I was like, I'm just going to be a gamer and go out for the match. That's what I'm here for. And, I think it was years ago, I made a decision not to get super locked into the idea that if I didn't practice, I wouldn't be able to perform. I had to separate from that. I've had too many injuries. I've had too many instances where you miss a flight, you get somewhere late, something happens, no practice courts are open, your hitting partner doesn't get there, and you have to mentally separate, okay, I didn't get to sort of do the routine I wanted to. How do I just show up for the game? How do I just show up for my match? And how can I win this? And that's a mental battle, right? And so through my career, I feel like I've been able to get better and improve at my days off. And I have a great team that actually can read me pretty well, right? And they'll make suggestions on when I should take a full day off. And when I mean a full day off, I mean I'm not going to the courts. I'm not sitting there watching tennis on TV. I'm going to explore the cities. It was in my early 20s that I really figured out that when I enjoyed myself and enjoyed the cities and felt like a normal human being and connected with friends and family, I performed better. At like straight up my performance went up. So I went through a phase where I was just like, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to be by myself. I'm going to visualize. I'm going to do, and that wasn't my time of best performance. And it's not saying that all these things fell off like because I was having fun, but that balance is so important. That's something that I always tell parents and coaches of young kids, that it's so necessary. It's so not, we talk about separating the wins and the losses from your identity, but having that life balance is just crucial for performance. Even if you want to be selfish and say, I'm doing it for performance, it's one of the reasons why I'm still playing like at 39. Like if I was burnt out, I would have stopped a long time ago. Like there's a lot of cool things that I feel like I can do in life, but I'm still really engaged in the process of getting better as a tennis player and exploring the world. Like I have a pretty cool job. Like I'm in Rome right now. Last week I was in Barcelona for a little bit. Like what happened was I lost earlier in Madrid and I had extra time. And old Bethany would have maybe been really upset, sort of sulked for a couple days, gone and practiced in Madrid. But instead, we kind of made the group decision to go to another city that we haven't really spent much time in. We went to Barcelona. I got a couple days of practice, a couple days off. And so that's when I had my reset meals. I had some wine a little bit later in the day, knew I had a few days before I came to Rome. And I got back here, and my first couple practices were some of the best hits I've had, in the last few weeks. So I discovered that days off really help me. And that's something that I've been able to sort of easily add into my scheduling.
How do you use data?
I use it a lot of different ways, right? Like if I'm in the red, what happens is it changes how I go about that day. Maybe I take an extra nap. Maybe I don't go in the gym for another time. Maybe I get to bed earlier that night. Like for me, I feel like I've always been able to carve out and use that data to constantly elevate. And it's not just about, oh, I'm green, it's going to be a happy day. I'm red, it's a really bad day. It's helped me discover things that have worked and not worked. Like you need the red days to almost be like, okay, well, that didn't work, or I'm going to shift it way differently for the next couple of days and see if I can bump that up. And maybe it's saying I need to take a break. And I got to be honest with that too, right? Yeah. Like, trust me, I went through half my career willpowering my way through things, and it led to a lot of injuries. I mean, I've had 2 hip surgeries, I've had 2 knee surgeries, and I like to think that I'm pretty tough and resilient, but there were times where I pushed too hard. And that's something that I use my Whoop data for. Now, do I wake up and I check how I slept? I've used it for a couple of years now, so I have a good idea generally of where I am. Every once in a while, I'm surprised, right? Like I feel like the data gives you an early sense of if you're getting sick, because I'll randomly get a really low red, and I'm like, I kind of feel okay, and like that usually it gives me a day to maybe like, okay, if I am getting sick, here's some of the things that I could do to maybe shorten the length of time that I'm sick, which is great. That's great info to have, right? But I mean, I use it for calculating how much REM is ideal for me, how much deep sleep. I use the stress monitor a lot, actually, at the bottom. That's probably what I look at the most. Obviously, I have all my strains, and one of the most interesting things I would say recently was figuring out why certain warm-ups I was getting into my zone 5 so quickly, right? And
Mm-hmm.
actually eating close to practicing would put me in this zone 5 heart rate where I thought I wasn't. I was like, what? This is just a 20-minute warm up. Like, I shouldn't be revving yet. Like, this isn't even the
Mm-hmm.
match. And so I'll use the heart rate sort of to gauge how long I want to be in that red zone, how, if I want to stay in zone 3. But the stress monitor is what I use a lot, because when I'm going to bed, I'll spend time, if I feel like I'm not able to sort of come down into like that point 0.3, point 0.2, point 0.4 before I go into bed. That's when
Mm-hmm.
I'll opt to do some breath work, or I'll do like, I
Mm-hmm.
have a couple brain games that I do that I feel like knock me out and bring me down. Actually, a really wild stat that I've recently found out is cuddling with my husband puts me in a really low stress zone. And it's just like, I remember actually a few times we'd be watching Netflix at home on the couch, and it actually caught me as napping. And I was awake. I was just so relaxed, and my breathing was just that consistent that it put me in that state when I was cuddling with him. So it's now Justin knows when I say I wanna cuddle, he's like, "Are you just trying to improve your Whoop numbers?" And I'm like, "No."
That's so good. It's so true though. Like you get in resonance with other human beings, and it's almost
Mhm.
like, I mean, I say like you should pick your partners based on like how they impact your physiology. I'm not even
It's
kidding though. Like
a
it's
100%. He's like,
like,
I joke, I'm like, he's my grounding mat. Like, if
yeah.
I really am stressed, like a long hug from him, or just a cuddle, like a quick cuddle at night, my stress level, and I've documented it a bunch of times, goes
Mhm.
down to like point 0.2.
Yeah, I mean, I think after 6 seconds of hugging, so that's like you wanna make sure your hug is at least 6 seconds, because that's
Yeah.
when you
Okay.
actually your brain can pick up on the fact that you're hugging, and
Okay.
if it's working, you'll release oxytocin.
And the Whoop data will tell you the
And the
truth,
"Ooh, dada," yeah, that's right.
but
Your
it's
stress
true.
monitor will plummet.
And it's so true though, because even when you talk about, I realized, and I know I use the journal a lot, right? Just to keep
Mm,
track of certain things, whether it's, I just did like I'm doing an ice bath here in Rome because I have access to that. Sometimes I do the cold showers.
nice.
Every once in a while I'll do cryo. So I generally keep track of sort of what I'm doing. And, obviously Whoop will give you sort of the percentages that you're getting out of it.
Mhm,
But I noticed when I hang out with friends, socializing,
mm.
I put that as one of my journal links. Did I feel like I socialized
Connected.
enough?
Yeah.
Because for me, and that's very personal, because there's times where I can sort of get in my own world in a zone way. It's not even a negative way. It's something so focused, and that actually tires me out. And if I don't spend time just going to lunch with someone, or coffee, or having a conversation outside of tennis, because I used to think those were tiring, actually, and my Whoop data said differently, that those were really important for me having my consistent high recoveries. Because when I missed out on that, when I thought I was kind of focused or in the zone in a good routine, nobody like needs to, like, I'm good by myself. It was never as high of a quality of recovery as when I did have those moments where I spent time with family and friends too.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot happening, neurologically, when we're in the presence of loved ones, and people that we feel like we're really connecting with emotionally and
Yep.
spiritually and sometimes physically, so yeah, yeah, I think it's pretty core to the human experience, and I think Whoop data will definitely confirm that that is true.
Yeah,
And,
and
yeah,
stimulating conversations, even learning
yeah,
something. Like, a big piece of this too is that I look to learn something every day. Like, we talk about sort of that
mm,
emotional and mental stimulation, because again, like, this this is the joy of being an athlete that goes to the extremes, because I'll be like, if I just rest all day and have no stimulation, that's going to be optimal. And you
mm,
just start to see that, oh, I dove down this rabbit hole and learned something about Rome or some other
mhm,
stats, and like that all of it adds. Like, there's no, I trust me, I've been tempted to go find one vertical and be like, this is the winner. Like, if I just did this to the best of my ability, that will catapult me. And it's such a medley of everything. And it change is necessary too, like shifting and adapting, being uncomfortable, being comfortable. Like it's always both sides.
Gosh, so true. It's so true. And I think like our body like needs and wants that variety. Like when you think about like from an evolutionary perspective, like we were never in like temperature controlled, environments, right? Like we went from like hot to cold to and I think just modernity has kind of robbed us, right, from all of that variety, and that's kind of what
Mhm.
you're describing is, putting your body through, in healthy ways and finding sweet spots across,
Mhm.
these different, I think we were describing, a lot of modalities, like hot and cold and, but also making sure that you're getting alone time, but you're also getting connection. And it sounds like you've just figured out an incredible balance across all of these things.
Trust me, I'm still testing it because
Yeah.
my extreme personality loves to like dive into certain areas, but then there's just this reminder, that everything in the universe is changing, everything about me is evolving,
Mm.
and sometimes going with that flow is the best course of action. We force so many things, and trust me, I still do, right? It's tempting. It's like I could do this better. I could like make this happen. And there's times where just sort of letting that go and sort of following that universal current is the best way, is the
Yeah.
way.
So you play mixed doubles and doubles. Have you seen women's sports kind of evolve and, where do you see it going, I suppose? And what's your role?
Well, obviously I'm still competing. I feel like I'm still able to sign up for tournaments and compete and give myself a chance to win. So I love that I'm involved still in that capacity. You know, for me, sports has given me so many tools that I maybe didn't always realize how important they were in life until I took some time off and joined real life, and I was just
Mm,
like, wow, I have like this discipline, this resilience, the problem solving, handling losses, handling big wins, like
mm,
all these things that you learn playing sports have such a big crossover, and that's really a big message of mine, is to sort of share that with all these young girls coming up, that you don't have to, it's not to just be professional, it's not just for awards on your wall. There's so much more that you get out of sports, that apply to whatever you're going to do, and it's something that
mm,
keeps your mind healthy, your body healthy. Tennis can be social. Like for me, tennis is an amazing sport. I mean,
mm,
doubles, you get that team aspect. There's something about singles in this individual sport, learning what it feels like to have all the pressure on you or having the win only be
mm,
you, right? There's just so many different dynamics that tennis takes you through. And I just would love to see more girls sort of grow up in that, with that confidence and with those tools that they can go on, and even if it's not professional and they stop after college, like I want them to still continue that healthy body, healthy mind, healthy lifestyle, and with whatever job or career path that they're following. And I feel like that's been one of my biggest messages, because I tennis really has given me a lot.
mm.
And it not just because I've been professional, I've been at the top of the game. Yes, it's awesome, but if I really think about sort of the woman I've grown into, it's from playing tennis.
Yeah. What's your next major tournament?
So I'm here in Rome. So this is a big event for us. It's 1,000. It's the same size as the tournament in Miami that my partner Sonia and I
Oh,
won
wow.
last month. So Sonia and I were playing here. She was actually playing singles today. There was some rain delays, but I think she ended up winning. So We'll probably play Friday or Saturday. So our first round. So we'll kick it off. So I'm going here. Then I play a smaller tournament in Strasbourg with another friend of mine, Des. It's a little smaller event, but then the next major is French Open in Paris.
Okay.
So
That's
that's
right.
that's in a couple weeks. Yeah.
That's really exciting. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. You're like so damn inspiring. You're 39 years old And I think to just have a career that seems like it's not slowing down. I mean, you're just seem like you're on an upward tick in every way imaginable. What do these next, like, 5 years look like for you?
Whew, that is a great question. I'll say kids are on the horizon here at some point. I've went through the process of freezing my eggs, which I think is something that I'd love to advocate. Just getting more information about sort of what that looks like for women, especially athletes,
Wow.
because we're sort of in this space where we're making decisions like that. It's like, can we
Mm,
take time off? Can we come back? And it's inspiring to see how many moms have come back on tour. And it was something that my husband and I had spoken about, but we had I felt sort of unfulfilled after a few of my injuries. I think at after one of the surgeries, my knee surgery, I couldn't walk. I was like, well, we could have kids now, and Justin's like, it's probably not emotionally the time to
yeah.
start talking about that. But
I'm injured, I just have kids. Yeah.
yeah, but so that's definitely on on the near horizon. But I played a full schedule this year. I mean, I've been
Yeah,
home
it's wild.
6 days this whole year, and
It's
and
crazy.
feeling good. Really, I
Yeah.
feel like it's again, balancing the days off, enjoying the cities, enjoying the travel,
Mm,
traveling with people I love that are inspiring, whether it's my coaches, my friends, staying with family in Miami. So I feel like I'm playing a bigger schedule now than I was able to in my 20s. I mean, honestly, I'm more
s
healthy now than I was in my
yeah.
20s. I had more injuries, I had more issues. And that is all that always feels great. It's like, do I just end my career like, hey, I feel great, I'm just gonna move on and feel great somewhere
Yeah,
else, I
it's so
guess.
hard to
Like,
stop playing, like, when you're just feeling good,
um,
you know?
but I will say it's more mentally, I think. I guess I feel great that I'm physically, I don't feel like that's keeping me from competing. For me,
Yeah.
it'd be more, there's other things I'm interested in doing in life. There's other places I want to go to other than the tennis tournaments. Every once in
Mhm.
a while, I get to a tournament and I'm like, I feel like I've been here a few times and it's getting a little repetitive. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be my moment where I'll choose to go do something else. But for right now, I'm planning on finishing this year with a full schedule. Obviously I've been doing really well with Sonia. There was a big announcement, actually. The partner that I won all my Grand Slams with, Lucy Safarova, who's a mom of two right now,
Wow.
she decided to come back. And so we're getting the band back together. She's from Czech Republic. So we're gonna play for the first time in our careers. We're gonna play in Prague. And so part of me is like, Lucy, you're deciding to come back now? Like, I was kind of like on the brink of maybe not playing. And she's like, hey, we could just have some fun. And I was like, that sounds great, actually. I was like, let's go. So there's still a little bit of tennis left in me, but
So
um
great.
we'll see how everything kind of balances out between family and normal home life and sort of just even wanting to change a little bit in life.
Alright, so it's 10:10 in Rome, and you're gonna be heading to bed right now. We've got just you're like the master, right, of sleeping and recovery. So what are you gonna do right now once you get off in order to make sure you get a nice restorative sleep?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to dim all the lights in this house. Like, one of the things that I do when I'm home is I have all my lights on dimmers. I've been tempted to replace some red light bulbs in the
Oh,
house. I don't
heck
know how
yeah.
I don't know. My husband is like not quite on that plane, but when I was staying with my family in Miami, I was staying with my brother, and he's a little bit like me. So he had the red lights in the garage, the red light in the bathroom. I'm like, this is awesome. So I'm gonna dim all my lights. I actually might have a little bit of tea before I go to bed. I generally put a little bit of music on, so I just calm my nervous system down. A lot of times I like to put my legs up. I do something. I don't know if you've heard of something called TRE. I'll
Oh, yeah.
sometimes do it. TRE. That's a whole other conversation because TRE has transformed some of my hips and some other injuries. So I'll probably do a little bit of that. a little bit of breath work.
So it's the
But
releasing exercises, right?
it's the
Okay.
releasing
Yeah.
exercises. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's used in trauma. Like, so I understand. I
Yep.
know the clinical application, but yeah.
Yep. So I'll do a little bit of that to sort of help me wind down.
Mm.
No screens, no phone. I put my phone on airplane mode. So there's no scrolling, there's no last minute scrolling. That's one of the things that I've noticed. If I do that, even when I'm meditating, if I've been on my phone and I close my eyes, you notice your eyes are even going like this, right? And it takes me, and I'll know how stressed I am, how long it takes me to still my eyes. And that's not
Wow.
even getting sort of my stress. That's just like my mind being too. So a lot of people, when they talk about their minds going fast, I'll shut down my phone sometimes hours before I go to bed, and I'm not scrolling. So if I'm doing anything, it's just something around, I can read a book or I can sort of listen to some music, and that's about it. So then I have my bed all set up. It's funny because actually Justin like makes fun of my whole routine. Like I have a whole, when I'm home, just even with my face products and everything, like I make it all this nightly routine where I just go down. Like I'm not one of those people that can just go from this to like conk out in
Yeah.
bed. So I'll dim everything down, and it will probably take me like 30 minutes right now, but I'm good with that. I'll be
Amazing.
I have a feeling I'll be in the green tomorrow. I had a pretty good recovery day today. I was able to get my stress down for most of the day. I stopped eating pretty early. So that's how I use my Whoop data. Like really, I just kind of
Yeah.
know what things will give me the biggest percentages. I know when I can sort of do little resets, and when I really need them, that I just kind of incorporate all the things that I know. So
Love it.
so with that, I'll do a little bit of meditating and be out for the count.
I love it. This has been so fun. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
good luck in this tournament. And can't wait to continue to follow you and your career, and just appreciate, all that you've done to bring, Whoop to your followers. I love to see you post about it, and it's really cool. So yeah, we're really, really grateful for just everything you've done for women's sports in general, but and the sport of tennis, and just and certainly for, just getting Whoop out there to broader audience. So thank you.
No, I definitely appreciate it anytime. I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole for probably another 2 hours. Like there's so many things that I'm thinking about that I like to incorporate. So we'll have to do this again, but
I'd love
appreciate you
that.
too. I mean, really, I think sort of putting the info out there on all these different things that women especially can explore. Again, when we use the words like performance, it takes on a little bit of a masculine
Mm,
sort of path, but women, you can just get better sleep, have more energy in your day, and you can really use all this data and learn more about your body, your mental faculties, your
mm.
emotions, and how everything is sort of interconnected. So I really appreciate you for sharing that, and for getting more data out to girls and women. And I think it will benefit. There'll be a big time benefit for everyone. So I'm here for it. Anytime you want to do this, I'm down. Just
So
let me know.
so grateful. Thanks, Bethany.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. See you.
Big thank you to Bethany for joining the show today and sharing her passion for health and fitness. If you enjoyed this episode of the Whoop Podcast, please leave a rating or review. Please subscribe to the Whoop Podcast. You can check us out on social at Whoop, at Will Ahmed. If you have a question you want to see answered on the podcast, email us podcast@whoop.com. Call us 508-443-4952. If you're thinking about joining Whoop, you can visit whoop.com to sign up for a 30-day free trial membership and take the first step to unlocking your own best performance. New members can use the code WILL, WILL, to get a $60 credit on Whoop accessories. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week with another great guest. As always, stay healthy and stay in the green.